Greetings, fellow seekers of the mysterious and peculiar. I am Miss Story Mystery, your guide through the enigmatic and unexplained. Today, we're venturing into a realm where reality blurs and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. In this spine-tingling episode, we'll uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of an eerie bungalow that left its guests terrified and bewildered. We'll also experience a restless night aboard the historic Queen Mary, where unexplained events unfolded, sending shivers down the spines of even the most skeptical visitors. And let's not forget the encounter with a shadowy figure in the inky darkness of a bedroom that still haunts one storyteller to this day. These are not your typical bedtime tales. These are real accounts of the bizarre, the otherworldly, and the unsettling. So, if you're ready to explore the uncharted, to challenge the boundaries of reality, and to embrace the mysteries that lurk in the shadows, then join us on this thrilling journey into the unknown. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because with Ms. Story Mystery, the truth is stranger than fiction, and you won't want to miss a single enigmatic episode. Let's unravel the mysteries together. A couple of years back, my boyfriend and I headed up to his parents' cabin for a weekend getaway. We had the whole place to ourselves, and we decided to go for a short hike along the Strawberry Trail, which runs next to a nearby creek. As we hiked along, about half a mile in, we were taking in the lovely scenery around us. The trees, the creek, and the peaceful vibes made us want to hug it out. So we did just that and closed our eyes for a moment. But then, out of nowhere, we heard a super loud noise. It was like something big was either flapping its wings or making a ton of noise while running. The sound was so intense that it felt like the ground shook a bit and a rush of wind hit us. We felt like whatever it is had stopped right in front of us. I was pretty freaked out, so I kept my eyes shut. When I finally opened them, I looked all around, but there was nothing there. It was like the noise just vanished, and we didn't hear it leave. We were both spooked, so we quickly hightailed it back to the cabin. My husband, our 2-year-old daughter, and I had recently moved into a semi-new apartment complex. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I spent a lot of time there. Almost from the moment we arrived, I began noticing strange occurrences. The lights in the hallway would flicker, and the TV had a tendency to turn off and on its own. Even during the daytime, when the apartment was flooded with natural light, I always felt an unsettling presence, like an inexplicable darkness hanging in the air. One early morning, as dawn was breaking, I experienced something that sent shivers down my spine. I heard the faint jingling of pet tags, as if a furry companion had leaped onto the bed, circled around on my comforter, and settled by my legs. This would have been ordinary, as I had grown up with a dog who used to sleep with me. However, there was a stark problem. We didn't have a dog. In a panic, I bolted up, only to find an empty bed. I convinced myself it was just a dream, but the unease lingered. Desperate to shake off the eerie occurrences, I decided to switch bedrooms with our daughter since her room was larger. Yet my efforts to escape the inexplicable continued. One night in the new bedroom, I awoke to an unsettling sensation. The covers were being tugged downward, despite my being a light sleeper who's constantly chilly. As my husband stirred, he also witnessed the covers being pulled down, seemingly on their own. There was no going back to sleep after that experience. A few weeks later, I had a vivid dream that would haunt me. In the dream, someone asked me if I wanted to see a ghost. And curious, I replied, "Sure." I stepped out of bed and walked into our living and dining area. To my surprise, the apartment was transformed. It was filled with antique furniture and decorated with someone else's belongings. My confusion mounted as I turned to the dining area, where I saw an elderly gray woman hunched over a desk that corresponded to our dining table. She slowly turned her head and glared at me with an intense, angry expression. The shock was so profound that it jolted me awake, and I remained rattled for days. A month later, we found ourselves talking to our upstairs neighbors, a mother and daughter. As we chatted about our apartment's history, they mentioned that the previous tenant had been an elderly woman who used to teach piano lessons there. However, her students were eventually asked not to visit the apartment due to parking issues and noise from the piano playing. What they disclosed next sent a chill down my spine. This elderly woman had been a notoriously angry individual, and she had passed away within the very walls of our apartment. My heart skipped a beat when I asked, "Did she have a little dog that died there too?" The neighbors looked puzzled but confirmed that she did. I didn't delve into my own spine-tingling experiences, as I knew most people would dismiss them as sleep paralysis or some other irrational explanation. Yet it was undeniable. Our apartment was haunted. We only endured a year there before moving, and thankfully, I never encountered the old woman again. This took place in May when my husband and I were in St. Augustine, Florida. When we entered a particular building, I felt an immediate urge to turn around and leave. It was as if I didn't want to be there at all. I told my husband that I'd give it a try, but wasn't sure if I could handle it. The place felt incredibly oppressive, like a heavy cloud of sadness was hanging over me. My skin crawled and I felt on edge like I wasn't safe. I pushed through my discomfort and decided to go inside. The uneasy feeling stayed with me as we explored the first part of the building. I kept looking back, convinced that someone was following us. As we moved further to the back, the atmosphere started to feel less oppressive. As we left the building and entered the lobby, I couldn't help but share my concerns with a lady there. I suggested that maybe they should cleanse or bless the museum. To my surprise, she told me that there were indeed 3 spirits in the place: a woman, a man, and another woman in a green Victorian dress. She mentioned that the first part of the building was constructed over part of a cemetery. The spirits had become less active due to ongoing renovations. I couldn't shake the feeling that these spirits were deeply sad, and I felt compelled to share this insight with the lady. Afterward, we returned to our hotel and reviewed the photos I had taken during our visit. It was quite spooky to discover that all the pictures I had taken in the first part of the tour turned out completely blank. A few years ago, I was out for a drive on the back roads one night just to clear my head. I decided to head towards a spot that had a view of my hometown. It was late summer and wildfires were raging in California, getting closer to the town next to mine. I pulled over on a dark 2-lane back road to get a look at the wildfire, which had been burning all night and creeping towards the neighboring town. I sat in my car and rolled down the window to see the fires. I sat there for about 5 minutes, no music or anything, just watching the fires. On both sides of me, there were fields covered in darkness. While I was there, I heard a very clear "hey" coming from the bushes. It was incredibly creepy and unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It definitely didn't sound human, more like an animal. I had no idea what it was, but I can tell you, I hit the gas pedal and sped away faster than I ever had in my life. A couple of months later, I watched a documentary about a man who had an encounter with a skinwalker, and his story was eerily similar to mine. He pulled over on a dark highway and heard the same noise coming from the bushes. That documentary sent a chill down my spine. When I was about 7 years old, I shared a room with my younger sister. She used to get scared at night and often ended up sleeping in our parents' room. In our room, we both had twin-sized beds with the heads against the wall and nothing on either side. One night, after my sister had already gone to our parents' room, I felt someone tapping my shoulder. I can't explain it, but I somehow sensed that it was something not quite right. There was just something unsettling about the way it was tapping, especially since I was just a young girl. I decided to pretend to be asleep and slowly pulled my blanket over my head. After a few moments, I felt the tapping again. This time, it was a bit harder, still in the same spot on the back of my shoulder. I cautiously peeked out from under my blankets, and directly in front of me, on the opposite wall, I noticed a dim light. I could see a large shadow of a man slowly moving by, cast against the light. I remember observing his profile, noticing his prominent nose and strong jaw. He seemed to move slowly across the room before vanishing. I was frozen in place. I couldn't move a muscle. Even after the light dimmed and the room returned to darkness, I sat there staring straight ahead, feeling a mixture of confusion and fear. I was only 7 years old, and although I was well aware of the existence of spirits and such, I had never before experienced a spirit making physical contact with me. I quickly hid under my blankets, curled up, and squeezed my eyes shut. I must have eventually drifted off to sleep because the next time I woke up, it was morning. It's an experience that I will never forget. I can still vividly picture that man walking across my bedroom. It's easily one of the most bizarre ghost encounters I've ever had. Years later, I discovered that the people who had lived in our house before us had painted the dining room black and used it for seances. Fun times, right? When I was younger, I used to visit my grandparents at their cozy bungalow. Strange things would happen during the night in that little house. The first odd experience occurred when I was 15. I was awakened by a soft whisper saying, "It's too dark." I got up, adjusted the dimmer light switch to make it a bit brighter, and thought, okay, that's better, before going back to bed. Surprisingly, it didn't strike me as unusual until the following morning. The voice had been strangely pleasant. 2 years later, I stayed there with my boyfriend, and a bunch of weird stuff happened at night. We heard eerie cracking noises from the walls, lights suddenly turned very bright in the next room, and strange sounds kept starting and stopping as I checked things out. It was a spooky experience. My grandparents were old-fashioned and didn't want my boyfriend and me sharing a room, so they stayed in their summer house in the garden while I slept in their room and my boyfriend took the spare room. One night, I heard footsteps in the next room, and it seemed like the door was opening. I quickly jumped out of bed, thinking it was my boyfriend, only to crash into a closed door. He was fast asleep in his room. On the last night, I stood in the doorway of my room, pondering the strange events, when I noticed a round, bright light through the curtain. I went closer, thinking it might be my grandma or granddad coming down from the summer house with a flashlight, but there was no sign of them or any light outside. The radiant, round light remained on the curtain. As I watched, it detached from the curtain and hung in the air next to me. It was as if I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I turned away from the window, walked around the bed, and made my way to the door, fearing it might slam shut any moment and leave me trapped. Strangely, the door stayed open, and when I looked back, I saw it. A large, football-sized glowing orb. Oddly, I didn't feel scared, even after the strange occurrences of the past week. I stared at the glowing orb while my boyfriend, who was getting a drink in the kitchen down the hall, asked what I was doing. I whispered, "Hurry, come here," without taking my eyes off the orb. He came over and saw it for a couple of seconds before it disappeared. We both stood there, surprised. I whispered, "It's back," when it reappeared. He went back to the kitchen, closing the door behind him, and told me to leave the door closed. We sat in the living room throughout the night until morning, and then left that day. I was scared it might follow me, but it didn't. I shared my experience with my mom out of fear. I had to stay at that bungalow a few times after my grandma passed away, but nothing unusual happened. For some reason, I had a feeling it wouldn't. I like to think my grandma had something to do with it. Eventually, my granddad moved to be closer to us. When I pass by the bungalow now, it looks like a welcoming place, even though I firmly believe there were some unexplainable things going on there. I can't understand why I was scared by some events and strangely calm during others. My husband and I attended a wedding on the Queen Mary and decided to stay the night. Even though we had been there several times, this was our first stay at the hotel. We checked in before the wedding, and as expected, our room was quite small but nice. After the wedding, we returned to our room to get ready for bed. I fell asleep pretty quickly because it had been a long day, while my husband stayed up scrolling on his phone for a while. Suddenly, he started nudging me and told me to stop. I was confused because I had no idea what he meant and tried to go back to sleep. He kept telling me to stop poking him, waking me up several times. Getting more and more irritated, we both sat up and I told him, "I'm not touching you like I said before." Just as I finished saying that, the headboard between our heads slammed into the wall as if someone had punched it. We were both sitting up, not touching the headboard at all. Startled, we immediately jumped out of bed and turned on all the lights. At first, we thought it might have been the guests in the room next to us, but we soon realized that couldn't be the case because we had heard them stumbling in much later. The walls were incredibly thin. After some time, we gathered our courage and attempted to go back to sleep. We turned off the lights, and my husband suddenly said, "Look, is it just me, or is that corner unusually dark?" Indeed, the entire room was dark, but one corner appeared black, even though it wasn't. After a rather unsettling night's sleep, we checked out the next day and shared our experience with the woman at the front desk. She asked about our room number, and when we told her, she smiled and retrieved a paper. It listed the top 10 rooms with paranormal experiences, and ours ranked third. The document also described the most common occurrences, like poking, loud bangs, and dark areas. It was an experience unlike anything I had ever encountered before, and it certainly lived up to the Queen Mary's reputation for being haunted. As we come to the end of our journey through these inexplicable tales, I hope you've enjoyed this dive into the unknown. The world is filled with mysteries and oddities, and it's up to us to explore and uncover the truth behind them. Remember, the stories I share are not just stories, they're real experiences from real people just like you and me. These encounters with the unexplained leave a mark that can last a lifetime. If you've experienced something similar or have your own story to tell, please share it in the comments below. And of course, if you've relished this journey and are hungry for more enigmatic adventures, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and ring the notification bell to join our ever-growing community of mystery enthusiasts. Until next time, my fellow truth seekers, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay mysterious. Ms. Story Mystery, signing off.